Welcome to Framework and our ongoing series on the films of John Carpenter. Framework's John Carpenter's The Podcast. That's what it's called. And today is They Live. This is the sort of sci-fi social satire on Reaganism and capitalism. Came out in then 88, I believe, and stars the incomparable Roddy Piper as Nada. Joining us today, well, of course, as always, the other host of the podcast, Al Schwartz. How are you today, Al?
I'm doing great. I prefer to be called Rowdy Al Schwartz, but that's a lot of people make that mistake.
Yes, good old Roddy Piper. What a presence! And joining us as he must when the conversation turns to Roddy Piper, Chris Prentice. Welcome back to the program.
Yeah, I am your go-to correspondent for all things Roddy Piper. Quick story. When do you know how I learned of his passing?
Oh, no.
It's already a bummer.
Well, I was watching Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, and I went. I had to go use the facilities in the middle of it, and so I just checked my phone real quick, and then I was getting all these texts from people telling me that he was gone, and so then I had to go watch the second half of Rogue Nation, all sad because Roddy Piper had passed away. So,
yeah, in a Roddy-less world, sure.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's kind of clouded my view of Rogue Nation, and I should probably watch it again and give it a. I mean, I liked it okay, but maybe I'd like it more without the sadness of the second half.
Yeah, you have to be sitting there during the whole third act asking yourself, what are they even fighting for at this point?
Right. Yeah, I was in no mood to watch any movie at that point. I was crestfallen, and maybe I sound like I'm kidding, but I'm really not. He was definitely my favorite of the of that era's wrestlers, probably my favorite wrestler of all time, and I think.
Oh wow! Okay.
I didn't know him as a wrestler, but I think it's a shame that he was not a more success. I think he was the best wrestler turned actor of that era for sure. And now, like
of that era, without question, yeah.
And that transition in the 21st century has been done a few more times between The Rock and John Cena and Dave Bautista. Like there is a pipeline to be a WWF star into an action comedy guy. In the 80s and 90s, it was basically only like everybody had all their chips on Hulk Hogan, who is, there's a lot you can say about Hulk Hogan, but limited actor is definitely one of the things.
Busted out as a movie star for sure. Yeah.
And, like Macho Man was never going to be an actor, and Ric Flair probably wasn't going to work for Roddy Piper. I think is actually a really decent actor. I saw recently, before watching They Live, saw his episode of Always Sunny where he's playing a wrestler. And in that one, he's sort of doing a riff on Mickey Rourke and The Wrestler. And I'm almost like...
Which is a riff on Roddy Piper, really.
Right. Well, and Jake the Snake, I think. But
yeah. Composite. Yeah.
But I'm sitting there watching that. He's so good on that Sunny episode. He's so funny and doing like... really like understanding the assignment, and that he had the funny part of the character in that episode is that he's giving a performance that's like really at odds with the rest of the show. And he's making the cast so uncomfortable. And I'm sitting there thinking like, I haven't seen The Wrestler since the theater, but would he have been better than Mickey Rourke in that role that Mickey Rourke probably won an Oscar for? I don't know. I have to look that up.
Well, Rourke should have won an Oscar,
but I don't know if he's got that. He kind of lived it, right?
Yeah, I mean, he was definitely at when wrestling blew up. I mean, it was, obviously Hogan was your number one guy, face of the whole thing, but
sure.
Piper was like right there. I mean, he was like the foil, and I mean, if you watch a lot of his old, I mean, never mind the matches, like I'll watch old promos with these guys. That's what I like to watch. I mean, the matches, I don't, whatever. It's like you've seen one, you've kind of seen a lot of them, but like the promos, man, if you watch a lot of Piper's promos from back in this era, it's just so entertaining. I mean, I can absolutely see why Carpenter would have latched on to him and saw, okay, this is my symbol for, blue collar oppression right here. It makes perfect sense.
Piper really was an artist when it came to those promos. Like that is a thing. I think a lot of The Rock's stardom can be tied back to he was also really great at that part of it.
For sure.
That's how he got his fan base.
I mean, Piper's kind of an innovator in this particular thing too. Like he set a template in a way. Mm-hmm. He's better at this, like heel specifically. Like he was kind of the first big villain in the WWF, right?
Was he?
Because he was, because like the first WrestleMania, the main event was a tag match between Hogan and Mr. T and Piper and Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. There was your main event for WrestleMania, and you had a special guest referee Muhammad Ali, and also on hand was Liberace for that.
That really is the greatest show on earth. My God,
it really
at that
was.
time. You're getting Ali, you're gonna get Liberace because they were just arm in arm.
And I believe former Yankee manager Billy Martin, he was like the guy who rang the ring bell, I want to say, but he was also on hand for Vince McMahon pulled out all the stops for that first WrestleMania and could have sunk the whole company, damn it, but it didn't. But Piper was a big part of it. And then in WrestleMania 2,
you also could just be riffing here and like going on. You could just be listing anything, and I would not disbelieve it. You could just start throwing out.
No,
and Pete Townsend sang the national anthem.
And Vice President Spyro Agnew showed up as well.
Exactly.
He was the card girl. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in WrestleMania,
Eva Perone
2,
handed him the belt at the end.
it was Piper against Mr. T in just a boxing match.
Oh wow!
What?
Okay.
Yeah. They just had a boxing match. For that was the kind of the second. The main event was Hogan versus King Kong Bundy. But that was probably the second most high profile match was Piper and Mr. T. And Piper, because you may be shocked to know this, but I actually read Piper's autobiography titled "In the Pit with Piper," and he talks a lot about he did not like Mr. T at all. He was not fond of Mr. T. So a lot big. So a real big. I don't know if controversy is not the right word, but they just did not get along with one another.
A beef. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And this is beyond just the promos and the selling it. I take it.
In
the autobiography. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm afraid my WrestleMania literacy kind of begins with Hulk versus Andre the Giant, which I think was 3. Is that right?
That was 3. Yes.
That was like the breakout moment, probably.
Well, and that actually, that relates to They Live, because Piper's match in WrestleMania 3 was basically his retirement farewell from wrestling match. He had a match against adorable Adrian Adonis, and it was basically Piper was leaving wrestling forever, and he was going out, and they didn't say he was going to Hollywood to become an actor, but that's what happened, because after WrestleMania 3, the first thing he did was he made a movie called Hell Comes to Frogtown.
Seen it.
Yeah,
yep.
Yeah, with the great Sandal Bergman.
Yep.
And
Conan the Barbarian fame.
That's right. Started the 80s working with Arnold and Conan, and finished the 80s working with Piper on Hell Comes to Frogtown. So, that's.
Do you know this movie, Al? Have you ever heard of Hell Comes to Frogtown?
I'm familiar with the title, and I'm seeing with a quick Google that there was a sequel, Return to Frogtown.
Yeah,
I haven't seen that one, I must admit. Not with Roddy's not in that, I don't think.
No.
I
think by that time he was making movies with Billy Blanks.
Frogtown, of course, is sort of a Mad Max riff with giant frogs. Sort of, I guess, a cross between Planet of the Apes and Mad Max. Were the apes frogs? Would be the best way to describe that. It's not good. It's not remotely a They Live type product. It is. It's trash. Yeah.
Yeah, most of society or the humans as part of society, the non-frog society, is sterile. But
it's one of those. Okay,
yeah, and like, but Roddy, of course, Roddy's not sterile at all, and so he's like supposed to impregnate some of these women who are not sterile. So yeah, there's a lot of that in the movie. Yeah.
I believe his name is John Hell. If yeah, is that right? That's why the movie's called Hell Comes to Frogtown.
Yeah, John comes to Frogtown wouldn't have been quite as memorable a title.
So you're telling me that after this, Piper's first movie was a Mad Max Battletoads Zardoz mashup?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Where he played the Conray role. I mean, okay.
Yeah.
I was out for quite a while, but I'm coming around on it. Because I was objecting to the premise of the post-apocalyptic frog society. Like, I just feel like I was trying to, maybe this is the wrong way to approach such a film, but I'm thinking about like any sort of post-apocalypse dystopia. I feel like amphibians are probably not going to fare well in any.
Would think.
Like they need a pretty precise environment in which to thrive. So I don't know. Mad Max obviously conjures a desert scenario. I don't know. Look,
it is a desert.
It is. Yeah, there's not much money to be spent, so they just went out to the most desolate area they could find and just shot this movie. And somehow through it all, John Carpenter was still able to take the lead from Hell Comes to Frogtown and actually convince a major studio to bankroll a movie with him as the star.
Well, is it a major studio? I mean, he's working with a mid-size studio at this point, because this is one of the ones like Prince of Darkness where he basically he had the deal with them that they would give him $3 million and then completely hands off to do whatever he wanted with it.
Yeah, I mean, but it was still Universal. I mean, it was, a big studio
distributing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of movie they could just make and just churn out back in the day. I don't know.
Right.
I feel like this movie would cost $50 million if they did it today and lose money. And, that would not be possible with the low overhead They Live had. I mean, this is just the premise sells itself here, honestly. Like, to the audience that they're marketing it to. I remember being terrified of the ads for this when I was a kid. I mean, you see the movie now and it's just like, well, this isn't even remotely scary. But yeah, the idea that like, oh no, those aren't their real faces, like, and underneath they look like Large Marge kind of. That scared the shit out of me. And I built up this film as a very different kind of movie than what it, of course, is. And to the point when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, it's actually kind of a political comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess now is maybe the time to get us. I think I don't love this movie. I think it's got, there's several parts of it that I really love, but I feel like it's less than the sum of its parts. Those parts don't gel together very well, in my opinion. And part of that is that it is a very, movies this goofy aren't usually this angry.
That's what's so cool about it.
You're talking about, you're listing that as a negative. Why?
Yeah,
there's nothing like this.
I don't know. I'm not against that conceptually, but just something in the watching of it, something about this doesn't quite come through to me. I don't know. I guess I want it to be maybe even goofier or funnier. Like, it's got a couple of parts.
It's pretty damn funny.
It's a funny movie, man.
It's a very funny movie.
I don't know, but the violence is a little too, like, I mean, I don't think it's as funny as Big Trouble. And I think that the violence in Big Trouble is more cartoony.
No, it's not going for the type of humor that's in Big Trouble. Big Trouble is very broad, very kind of, look, this is supposed to be a funny action adventure where the lead is just kind of a big goof, and he's not going for that at all with They Live. I mean, They Live it's funny, but in different ways. It's
it's satire. This is proper satire. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like this is a movie that it exists right in the same world with like RoboCop and The Hidden and even Terminator, where there's very violent, a lot of very bleak imagery, but very wicked sense of humor in all of them as well.
Well, you had me on RoboCop there and lost me at Terminator.
I think Terminator. I don't know. There's some funny stuff in Terminator, at least to me anyway. I don't know. There's not like Arnold in the gun store. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
That's a
that is,
funny.
I
That's
mean,
a funny moment to me.
there's some dark humor there, but I would ultimately classify or describe Terminator as a notably humorless movie.
T2 is funny, but not like this. This is this is a political satire as sci-fi action.
Yeah,
and that's in a continuity of like Verhoeven. That's rare air in my opinion,
right.
Especially one that works. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess Verhoeven's the only one who really pulls this type of thing off in my
it's tough
view experience. I mean, there's probably some examples if I sat and thought for a while, but I mean, I don't know. Like the other examples because I was reaching more, I guess, in the other direction. But for comparison points, I was reaching more in the comedic direction and thinking things like Repo Man or more recently like Sorry to Bother You. Those are fairly angry movies, but are also more, I guess, aggressively funny, more consistently like pacing with the jokes. I feel like the gags here often have a lot of air between them, a lot of screen time between them when they land.
It is an odd tone for a film. I mean, I don't think RoboCop presents as a comedy either, though. I mean, I think it's
a very funny movie.
A comedy, but it's very funny. Like this, this has a lot of laughs for me, but it also has, like the first 30 minutes of this is very dry and very like it there's no aliens. It's kind of slow paced. There are minutes that go by without dialogue. It's
well, in the first 30 minutes, there's not aliens. There's also not jokes.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
No, it's a lot. It's a lot of setup. It's 40 minutes until Piper kills the alien cops. I mean, that's a big chunk of time, but there's really no action until that point. So, I mean, there's a lot of setup, but I think the fact that it kind of takes its time, and at least when you first watch it, you don't really know exactly what's going on. Those are pluses to me because you're just kind of sitting there. You have really no idea what's going on until Piper does, until he puts on the glasses.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's one of those ones where the first time you watch it, that you're just like, what the hell is this movie? For a solid third of the running time, you're kind of like so when's this going to start? And then it decisively starts, then it is all of a sudden, I see what's going on here. Okay. You put on the glasses and one of those. It is angry, like you said, but it's also funny, like you said. And that is an odd kind of a tonal thing to coexist. And I could see that throwing somebody off. I do love that. I think that's just amazing and rare. It does feel like a real angry hippie who can't, quite help himself from being a goofball at the same time. Just sort of ranting, like a political rant. This is basically a reptilians movie. This is about, secret alien monsters that run the all world governments movie, which, and there is, in fact, there's anti-Jew hate groups that have embraced this film as a result, which really pisses Carpenter off, of course. He's like, no, I was very clear about what I was making fun of there. So it's a weird mix of elements. It's a lot going on, and I could see somebody bouncing off that, but I am surprised, Al. I thought this one would be up your alley. It's
well, it's not a bad movie. I don't dislike it.
This is my number one Carpenter film. I mean, this one has always worked for me.
Because that alley where Piper and Keith David are fighting, that is Chris's alley.
That's it's funny. It's like there's all this stuff going on in this movie. Oh, and by the way, there's like the greatest 6-minute fight scene also in the film. It's just, it really has nothing to do with anything, but here you go and enjoy it. And I think that's another reason why it's my favorite from Carpenter, is because a lot of times I think Carpenter is not very good directing action.
I kind of have to agree, sadly.
Yeah, I love Escape from New York. Great characters, love the premise. I think a lot of the action is just not very good in it at all. And I think, I'm not trying to say that he turns into John Woo or Walter Hill in They Live. I just think it's better. It has more of a pop to it, and there's just the action that he has in They Live. It's a big step up for him compared to his other movies.
Well, I'd say that the only time the action in Escape from New York is well done, really, I think, is the like boxing ring gladiator fight. So maybe there's something that he's better with a fist fight than he is with a gun, a shootout.
That could be.
Or a chase. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. You can be more static. You can kind of just, tell a story without changing a location. It's, it makes sense. Or I don't know if it makes sense, but it's an observable fact at this point when you go through them all that that may not be his strong suit. His strong suit is sort of suspense and building up sort of anticipation and dread, and this movie does do that, though.
Yes,
kind of.
This thing builds. It builds.
I think my gripe with it is mainly one of aesthetics, and I think this sort of because it's we were talking earlier about how it's angry and funny, but that's not really the right word. I'm not opposed to angry and funny going together, but it's angry and goofy. And the choice about to make the aliens true form this sort of black and white 1950s Mars Attacks style alien thing is ultimately a little too goofy. Like it throws any of that type of dread that it's been building out the window. Yes, technically they still run the world and Piper is still under just as much threat, but I'm just looking at these guys like, okay, this looks like the bad guys in a Muppet movie, like they're and for a Carpenter movie, I expect something different. Like Big Trouble in Little China embraces the goofiness of its villains as part of the whole aesthetic. Here, it's sort of like wants to be,
I'm a
dystopian.
big fan of the aesthetic of these guys. I think I really like how these guys look.
Now,
the 1950s thing.
I don't mind the look of that on its own, but I just don't think it doesn't mesh well with the other elements.
Is there anything at all to the idea that those aliens are red, white, and blue, or is that just kind of an overblown?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Of course, that's intentional. There's no other reason for these things to be red, white, and blue. I mean, it's an insane color scheme for them on its own. So yes, it's got to be. I mean, this is not a subtle film. This is going to explain to you exactly what it's mad about at all times. Yeah.
Yes, there's not a hint of subtlety anywhere in this movie. That's
right.
That's
but what's
a knock on it?
What's great is that I think I was maybe like 11 when I first saw this, and I just loved it from the get-go, but I certainly did not stop watching it and turn it off and say, "Oh man, look, Carpenter, he really did Reaganomics good there." Like I really didn't, I didn't really think anything about that. I just think it worked great as an awesome sci-fi action film, and so later on you watch it a little more and you realize a little bit more of what Carpenter was trying to say with it, and it added to the movie. So I think it works both ways, and to me,
there's definitely something to that, because I think if I had seen this under different circumstances, I would have a very different view of it. Because I think the best way of seeing it would have been when I was 11, just turning it on HBO and not really knowing what it was or who had done it, and then might have blown me away with some like the wild turns it takes and the big fight and all that. But I didn't watch it until I was in my 20s, and like had it built up for me quite a bit, had a reverence for Carpenter from other movies I had seen. So I came into it probably more expectations than are good for it. And especially the critique of Reaganomics and yuppieism, I mean, not taking away any points for accuracy, but it felt a little trite and flat and not particularly, I don't know, not even that intelligent to me.
It's not nuanced. I'll tell you, it's going for big and broad. I mean, there's a lot that Roddy Piper brings to this film as a performer, and I think a bit of a wrestling sensibility is part of that. I mean, you certainly see it in the fight scene, and you see it in all his one-liners. The famous line, I'm here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum, makes no sense contextually, and is clearly just him improvising wrestling one-liners, and that's the best one. Yeah,
Carpenter loved it, and you get why.
And he was right. It's an iconic moment.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely a line that deserves to be on bumper stickers, and that's all great. But I'm a huge fan of "Life's a Bitch and She's Back in Heat." I think that one doesn't get the love that it deserves. That's a great Roddy line right there.
Everything he says when he puts on the glasses for the first time, that's sort of like 15-minute segment there of him just wandering around downtown LA. Everything comes out of his mouth because he's not exactly upset or frightened at discovering the real world is. He's just sort of a dumbstruck imbecile, and he's kind of bemused by it all. He's just sort of like, "You're ugly.
Your head looks like it fell in the cheese dip in 1957."
Yeah.
I mean, he does seem to be having fun with it.
Sure, but it's also, I don't know, it's the clash there between the actual like anger and the or actual dread versus the goofiness. Like he turns from putting on these glasses and seeing the aliens and the subliminal messages to just going on a shooting rampage like on a dime. It's like there's very little space between the moment he realizes something's up and the moment he's just walks into that bank and goes, I mean, that's the thing. He walks in the bank and goes, "Oh, they're everywhere." And so he just immediately, with very little hesitation, is like, "Guess I'm just going to blast my way through this random door I just walked into."
Yeah, like no plan, no particular chill of any kind. Just like I mean, it's almost that Matrix thing where he's like, "Oh, the world as it really is gives me impunity to kill. Mm-hmm. I can just take these guys down. Who cares? Who cares about what happens to me? Even it is silly." And I mean, he sort of like wakes up to that a little bit as the film goes on and develops a hint of subtlety in plotting. But yeah, the initial stuff, and even like when he sees Reagan on the television, and Reagan is an alien and making a speech, and his response is like, "Huh, figures it'd be something like this," like it's straight up cartoon.
He's great though. I mean, I think he's great through the whole thing.
Wonderful.
But when he first puts on the glasses, it's 7 minutes where he doesn't say anything. It's just him reacting, and it's all his face, his body, and he doesn't say anything. And I think he sells it perfectly. I think he is really good in that stretch of the movie where it's all on him, but he doesn't say a word, but he's just holding it all together. And all the little subliminal messages and all the different billboards. And it's funny, I feel like every time I watch this movie I catch one that I hadn't seen before, so it's always like a little bonus. And I think this now, watching it again for this recording, the one magazine on the newsstand that I hadn't noticed before, but the little message, it just said "Honor Apathy." I loved that. I'd never seen that one before, so that one was the new one that jumped out at me this time.
Carpenter being prescient. This is before the grunge era, but foreseeing it coming.
I watched this on a new 4K for this time, and I got to see all those magazines in the back of that stand for the first time. Paused it, took a look at them all. It was great.
Yeah.
Still, nothing beats "This Is Your God" on the money. That's my favorite one.
I like that the alien guy is buying one of the magazines, but presumably the alien guy looks at us and sees the same thing Piper does, right? Which is just one 20-point font word on each page.
No, I don't think that's not how it works. No,
I don't think so. I because it doesn't make sense otherwise.
So he's the alien yuppie who's buying the Playboy for the articles.
Yeah, I mean,
no, but the aliens I think don't see the vision of the sunglasses. They're seeing just regular, just as humans would see. That's how I always took it. They're not.
He does want to read the articles, though, the cover articles that are just there to tell you to honor apathy and to marry and procreate.
Yeah.
There is a fun question about like how much the aliens have bought into the placebo world that they have created for us.
Well, their whole invasion is basically through promotions. It doesn't really involve ray guns or ships, assaulting anything. It's just promote all of us into the positions of power, and that's it. We're in charge. That's their whole plan.
Yeah, it's alien takeover of the world by marketing. Essentially, is I guess the satirical idea, right? I mean, that's in a nutshell. Just our regular shit, capitalism and commercialism being used to destroy us or reduce us to a slave population, and his point being, that's actually happening just without the aliens.
And I mean, actually, there's a consistent way of viewing this where the aliens, at least the rank and file aliens that he's shooting up during this movie, are more conscious of that whole scheme, but basically the scheme of capitalism,
seem to be,
but also are as much sort of victims and perpetrators of it themselves at the same time. The way that
I think you kind of just have to take that to be what's going on. It kind of doesn't make sense if they're just reading the Obey magazine, or whatever, or maybe, I don't know, maybe they're buying into the illusion. That doesn't really hold water, they're not buying magazines to fool us, I guess.
Though there is the alien at the very end when everything gets exposed, and they have the shot of the alien watching the Siskel and Ebert show in the restaurant, and which, first off, I mean, where is this restaurant where people are just gathered watching a Siskel and Ebert show? But I mean, it sounds like a cool place to be. I don't know, it just doesn't sound very realistic. But if you look, that alien, that's all he's doing. He's just watching the TV. He is totally transfixed by the television, and he can't be bothered by anything else at all. It's all the humans that start reacting because now they see all these aliens everywhere. But it's kind of funny that one of the big subliminal messages is watch TV, and then at the very end you just have this alien who's just completely transfixed watching this Siskel and Ebert show.
Yeah, I mean, I think that ultimately they are as victimized by this as we are, by the allure of our merchandise and marketing. I think that kind of has to be what's happening here. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. But I was
kind of thinking of it as that these aliens are probably not like the creators. They're probably from a planet that was already completely taken over by this stuff, and they've been assimilated into it. And now they're here just sort of, spreading the franchise to Earth. It's almost like a multi-level marketing thing is the way I was sort of envisioning it.
I believe that Carpenter would sign off on that interpretation for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems to be his number one target is that everything is trying to sell to you. Everything you're trying to be, everything you see is trying to sell things to you. And that seems to be the bee in his bonnet behind this film.
Well,
and just fuck Reagan.
That seems to be the target. Yeah, the target of his anger too. Is that's I think pretty explicit in the movie. Is he's less angry at the aliens than he is at the people who find out about the aliens,
the collaborators,
and buy out. Yeah, and buy in. And he's pretty clear about thinking we all. But that's most people. Most people, we all sell out. This is again the '80s, so selling out has not even become the bugbear that it was in the '90s. But
no, there was a marketing push to nobilize selling out in the 80s, as a matter of fact.
And a push back in the 90s, and then the final victory in the 2000s for the 80s spirit.
Well, I always wondered what does George Buck Flower do to sell out? We see him, in the homeless camp.
Flower.
He's one of the great, for lack of a better term, bum actors of that whole era. But I never really get the sense.
Performance.
Yes. Oh, he's outstanding. I just don't really, and the movie doesn't necessarily have to tell us, but I never really got the sense of what did he do to sell out to suddenly now he's part of the human power elite. I didn't quite get, because we see him when in the homeless camp, and when the cops come and they're basically destroying it, there's one shot of him where he just lights a cigarette, and it's almost like, maybe he knew this was all going to happen, because he just seems to not even care that all the cops are destroying this. But then there's another shot where the cops are kind of moving in on him, and he does look scared. And so that's kind of the last time that we see him until the end of the movie, when he has sold out and he looks great and he's looking like $1 million.
It's like a little Uncle Pennybags suit. Yeah. Hey, I'm a rich man now. See, that's so good. I just assume, I assume he sold out the the insurrectionist enclave next to the homeless shelter. I assume that's what he did.
Yeah, that's the only thing I could think of.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, you know,
Because they're
again,
pretty bad at hiding that they're there. So
no, it's not. They're not exactly.
Yeah,
it's not. Yeah, it's a pretty. You know, they just have kind of Peter Jason looking around as their security. That's all. That's
suspicious
all
looking. Just like no one's looking at me. Yeah, just
constantly looking at the helicopters flying overhead. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's what Buckflower did. Is just it's never, and the movie doesn't really have to make it clear, but it's just never really made clear what exactly he did to now he's part of the upper crust.
Well, I mean, it's something that I assume happens all the time, and that there's millions of collaborators globally. At least in the reality of this film.
I never really worry about the plot of this movie in that way, but I guess it does fit that. One, you're right that what information he could give them on even to the point of pointing out they're over there in that church. Like the aliens then have no reason to actually like reward him for that.
But no reason not to either.
Right. I think they have no reason not to. They're happy that anybody convert they get, anybody who knowingly signs on, like, okay, great. The goal is to get everybody on board eventually anyway. So
it's a generational thing, like he'll be dead before the humans are no longer necessary or whatever the ultimate plan is.
Well, if it's a multi-level marketing thing, it makes sense. Yeah, sure. Any new signature you can get is fine. It
seems like the aliens would rather just make a person rich than have to kill them. Because remember when the alien cops are talking to Piper, the one guy's like, hey, now you kind of stumbled onto something and we can all benefit from this. It's like they would rather just cut a check than do any real damage. So I don't know, they must just had a lot of resources and they really just did not want to spill too much blood.
Yeah, just money and selling out is the ultimate, villain in this. And so that makes sense. They're just like, nah, come on, just sign in. You can be part of this. You can be part of this, Roddy. It's fine, right? You're in the know now. And so that seems to be their go-to. The collaborators and the aliens are all on board with just like, well, no reason to fight here. Just accept it. Just accept it. And that's what pisses Carpenter off the most. And he's the kind of guy who's like, I won't accept shit, So that works satirically as well. That's all to the point of the film, and creates a lot of funny scenes like the Buckflower thing, or everything involving Meg Foster as that character, which is what a hell of a character that like is. That's one where they didn't fill too much in. I have to admit, like I don't have the whole story on her.
That is one thing that I've that I didn't remember at all from watching it 15 years ago, and then that came out. It's like trying to remember. Is there a romance plot with her and him in this? He takes her hostage. I'm like, does this go to her? Or is she a femme fatale? That is not part of the movie that I remembered, anything to do with her. So when she suddenly turns on a dime and throws him out a window, that got me pretty good.
That's great.
That overhead shot where she tosses him. That's what I mean about Carpenter just doing better with action. That's such an awesome overhead shot. Like you just don't really see scenes like that from that perspective. It just looks so good.
Well, and of course Piper can sell it because that's
sure.
That's what he does.
2/3 of a job of a professional wrestler is selling that type of thing.
And I love that her entire first segment here, where he kidnaps her and takes her to her house. I mean, it doesn't basically because we've seen movies. We're prepared for in 80s action movies in particular. We're kind of like looking for like, okay, is this a burgeoning romance? That's the sort of thing I would expect. That's what happens in The Running Man. It's sort of a trope. So. It's kind of a shock when like she just never stops being a kidnapping victim in that segment. And the entire thing builds to her just like, no, I'm trying to escape you. I'm scared to death of you. And then
it feels for a moment like she's getting turned on by it, or is maybe even doing like just trying to put it on for his benefit, but it's like gonna turn that way to, oh, you're the big bad guy and I'm helpless in your arms or whatever. But even that doesn't like last for part of a scene, and then you get she's throwing them out of a window very quick.
No, I love her neighbors. The two guys when she comes home and Piper leads her out of the car, and there's like the one guy kind of looking and says, "Hey, Holly," and then the other dude's just like he's got like a joint in his hand. He just kind of looks at him and is just like, huh, and just kind of shrugs. They're those two neighbors are two of my favorite little unsung characters in this movie.
Yeah, there's some good little bits in this movie.
I like when she says, they're talking in her house, and Piper's like, "Oh, you got to put on the glasses," and she just kind of says, "Well, whatever you want me to see, I'm gonna see it anyway." Or the way she says it is just really well done. Whether I see it or not, I'm gonna see it.
I'm gonna say I do, whatever. Like,
right.
And in the end, she's just a filthy collaborator, though.
Yeah,
that's it. I feel like she never even made a real effort to convince him otherwise.
Well, there's that scene when she's at the insurrectionist meeting and she's like, well, one thing we all know for sure is that the antenna is not on top of the cable station. We all know that, right? Of course not. That seems to be her contribution.
Well, I also love in that bit where Peter Jason is like, "Come on, everybody, our numbers are so low. Can't you get more people to show up for our insurrection meeting? Come on, people, we're getting sloppy."
His vibe is just like he's like a camp counselor trying to get disinterested teens to participate in like the sing along or something. It's like,
I mean, this is pathetic. Everybody
it is not going well for the insurrectionists.
Next
do
week,
not have their shit together.
I want one automatic rifle from everybody next week, okay? And don't come here without an automatic rifle. We have this table. You see the table? Just toss them on there.
They are so outmatched by state
handgun. Last week, Steve bought a crossbow. Come on, man.
Man, when the SWAT team, the 75-person SWAT team arrives at the beginning, and they raise that place. They just pull that old man out and start like just punching him in the stomach over and over again.
Yeah,
these guys just getting the shit kicked out of them. They got no chance.
So, we haven't talked at all about Keith David, which is wrong. Right. This is a lot of ways. This movie is basically a two-hander, and Keith David is one of the only two real characters in this movie. And obviously, he's great because he's always great. But maybe one of the reasons why the goofy tone clashes with some of the angrier, darker stuff is that his exit from the movie, the way that is so perfunctory and cruel in the way in its offhandedness that I do appreciate that in a lot of movies when they do it. If it was Michael Mann doing something like that, I would be singing about how brilliant and unsentimental he is.
It is like something out of Thief. Yeah.
With this goofy ass tone and these funky Tim Burton aliens, it feels like the cruelty of that feels like extra wrong to me. Like it's jarring.
Well, it is a cynical movie. I mean,
for sure.
I mean, yeah, they all die is the end. All the good guys die at the end. They just pull off the thing they're trying to do. It's a very Dirty Dozen finale, I mean, he gets the... I mean, you're right though. Roddy's exit is much more, on his own terms.
Yeah, he gets to flip
middle finger,
flip society off.
Very Snake Plissken. Yeah,
the movie dramatizes that, for lack of a better word, and it's there front center on screen. And it's not that I needed a happy ending for Frank or that or anything. Right. It's the way in which the movie treats it, which is so jarring. It actually throws me back to a little. I remember, Chris, when we were talking about the Sopranos, and spoiler alert for the Sopranos, but there's a major character who dies towards the end of that show, and we talked quite a bit about how upsetting I found that whole thing, and it wasn't because like that character being murdered was something we couldn't have seen coming, but the way the show treated it, like, did not make a big deal, a climax out of it. It felt like that should be the main
something
like culmination of an entire season of this show to to dispatch a character of that stature, and the way that it is done so abruptly and the show is moving on from it so quickly felt like upsetting in a totally different way. It's weird how like movie structure can do that, where like the content would not. I've seen worse deaths for characters I had a lot more affection for than Frank that upset me less than that.
Well, it's so fast. It's just so quick. I mean, it's like almost, I think, one shot of her putting the gun to the head, and you just hear the bang, and that's it. It's just you can't even really process it.
Right.
You know, they've just kind of moved on to Piper on the roof, and you're like, oh shit, Keith David just got killed.
That's also the reveal that Holly's bad. It's the official reveal that Holly's bad too. You don't know until then.
Well, you should know just because it's Meg Foster.
So it's only because like it's like, oh, that's the reveal. She did this horrible thing that now we hate her so much that she's gonna get a big giant punishing villain death. Like, no, it's kind of the movie's over a few minutes later anyway, and it's not like, you know, Piper doesn't really like, you know, react to Frank's death either. You know, like he's not really taking revenge for him. I mean,
this movie's cut pretty fast in the second, like in the last hour, after the languid first 30-40 minutes, then it's all of a sudden a rocket sled. Yeah. I dig that though. I like how quick this movie just ends. You know, I mean, this is another Carpenter thing. You know, he just gets the fuck out of the movie, and this one is just so tight. The last 20 minutes of this, so much information just falls in our lap all of a sudden. You know, with the watches that create portable holes out of Roger Rabbit and deliver them to like concrete access tunnels to rich person
I love
parties.
The little.
Buck
I
Flower
love
and, you know,
the noise that the watches make when they get activated. I love that noise. Whoever came up with that noise effect, God bless them. It's great.
I love Buck Flower exiting the film with that too. He's like, "See you later, boys." Like Rumpelstiltskin.
Bye, boys.
Like, it's so cool. And then we're into like, oh nope, we're at the antenna at the television station. Meg Foster's here. Oh no, she's evil. Oh, Keith David's dead. Oh, everyone's dead. Yep. And then you get the final shot of the film, which is just a wonderful final shot. It's just hilarious.
It is up there. It
puts you out in a great mood.
I mean, we've talked a lot about how good Carpenter is at endings, and that it ends on a gag, which I guess is one of the things that should let me know that, okay, this was more of a comedy than it was an angry political screed or whatever.
Yeah,
but
it can be both.
Yeah, it can be. I guess my thing is, I kind of want the Verhoeven version of this type of thing, or he's like, maybe Verhoeven just defined how I'm able to
You've
process
got the Verhoeven versions. This is the Carpenter.
Yeah, this is
version
pretty.
You know?
This is pretty close.
I feel like Carpenter could do I want the Assault on Precinct 13, the Thing Carpenter version, and not the Starman, Big Trouble in Little China Carpenter version. Like,
this is the question I wanted to bring in here. If you take out Kurt Russell, or take out Roddy Piper and replace him with Kurt Russell, make the film a little more serious in tone, make the aliens a little scarier. Is it a better or a worse film? And I think I know your answer. But I mean, I wouldn't want to lose Roddy, but it does change the tone dramatically.
I don't think we need Kurt Russell for that to be more serious. I think it can work just fine with Roddy. You could keep Roddy Piper in here because nothing I've said about this. Piper is not the problem with any of this movie. He's actually great.
I think he brings a tone to it, though. I mean, I think his pluses are kind of, you know, wrestling based in a lot of ways.
Yeah, but I think just a version of this where the aliens are more grotesque and where the violence is like goopier and gorier and a little more like it's R-rated, gleeful, messy stuff, the way that RoboCop or Starship Troopers violence even is. I think then, I don't know, maybe it's not even better, but I have an easier time processing this tone with that because there is so much violence, and especially there. I mean, it's decades before, you know, we had the term active shooter in our daily lives twice a week.
Right.
But that is very jarring in this way. And it would feel, but because maybe it's just because Carpenter's not that great at gun violence, but it feels kind of, for as wild and off the chain as he's going, the violence itself feels very bloodless, kind of lacks an impact. And if it was big, goopy, gory violence, I think I'd be more on the page with this.
I can see that. I don't think violence would hurt this film at all.
I think it's just violent enough. Like I don't think it needs to be more. It doesn't. I never want less violence in these kind of movies, but it doesn't need any more. I think like I said, I think this is the best he's done with action. I mean, there's a real pop to a lot of it. Like even in the bank, it's it's less gruesome because we're seeing it mostly in black and white because we're seeing Piper's vision. But there's a part where Piper blasts one of the dudes working at the bank, who's one of the aliens, and you just see a big old spray of blood hitting the wall. But it doesn't have quite as much of a gruesome feel because it's black and white, so we're not really seeing full on blood, but it's pretty gruesome.
And because the aliens look like Sesame Street puppets.
Yeah,
they look like they're a little more unsettling than that. They have big open wound faces and silver eyes and exposed teeth, and they're a little creepy.
Yeah, that doesn't make any impact.
They scared me when I was a kid.
But remember, we're as ugly to them as they are to us.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Well, again, that's sort of a thing that Starship Troopers gets across even better.
Starship Troopers is a better film, but it's not. I mean,
that's not the standard. I know.
Yeah,
they're
not
both
that
fantastic.
far though. Yeah, like I put them in the same bin. They're in a small bin, as a matter of fact. I mean, there's few films that can even bat in the same weight class as the great Verhoeven sci-fi satires. And this is one of them. That's cool for me. Now I get that the tone is different. It's it's got this silliness to it. I like that. It's unique, I think, and I enjoy it. And it makes me laugh. I mean, this is a funny ass movie. I do think there is a lot of thought put into a lot of the. I was going to say subtext, but there's not a lot of subtext in this film. Just
it's text.
Yeah, what is being expressed here is clear and direct, and the narrative that has been crafted serves this idea well. They look that way because they are monstrous ghouls, and that is his opinion of the sort of the yuppie Reaganite class. They are making our climate like theirs, global warming. They're cultivating us as a slave underclass, as livestock, all that stuff. That's really on the nose, but he's so angry that I think it works. Like it reminded me of there was a Masters of Horror episode that got it was like at the time it was one of the most notable, one of the most well reviewed. It was Joe Dante made one called Homecoming. No, he did an okay one, but no, Joe Dante got all the big credit and headlines from that first season of Masters of Horror for a satire of the Iraq War, where every soldier killed in Iraq came back to life as a zombie to vote out the Republicans. Which is it's just a silly ass premise. It's just an anvilicious, angry premise for a movie. I mean, it's explicitly about W and Iraq policy and stuff, and it made its point by being obvious. It's not, and I think that is something you can do in horror and sci-fi and genre. Especially if it's a little silly, like Homecoming and They Live, you can just say exactly what you fucking mean, and you get away with it because you've got goopy aliens or zombies present and showing their ass. So people can, I think, accept the message a little bit cleaner if there's these levels of distraction on top of it that make it a genre thing, that make it a little less. I mean, you would never call this movie preachy, for example.
Sure I would. Why not?
No, it's too silly. You're having too much fun with it. I'm having too much fun with it.
Oh, I think it's very much. I mean,
when it gets up on its soapbox and sounds like a Brecht play, I think that's fun though. I think that's part of the that's entertainment value added. I don't feel like I'm supposed to, feel bad about my part in American, corporate hegemony because. I'm just too busy laughing at the marry and reproduce subliminal messaging under the signs. It's over the top.
No, sure. Okay, sorry. It's
by design. Yeah.
Maybe there's just something to be a line to be drawn between preachy and sanctimonious, perhaps. Because right, I don't feel like the movie is scolding me while I'm watching it. But it is a sermon. It's on a soapbox shouting.
But he's got like a lot of hand puppets and shit. He's got a lot of...
I mean, look, this movie it's a sci-fi action adaptation of like a 90s George Carlin routine.
Yes, exactly. What could possibly be wrong with that?
And all of your negatives sound great.
Yeah, I didn't mean that as a knock.
I wish there were more George Carlin inspired sci-fi action films.
I agree. And I honestly wish Carpenter had taken another swipe at one. That would probably be fine. There's just something about the aesthetic here that doesn't quite gel with me. And I think it's because it's not that I'm looking for subtlety here. Like I'm saying that maybe I'm not impressed with the political message that much because it is very blunt and kind of surface level, but that's fine. I don't think this movie needs to be subtle, but I think what I was saying about the violence feeling a little watered down to me in terms of its graphicness, that's where I feel like why are you pulling punches on the violence end of the spectrum? Like this is a movie. I feel like it should be reveling in the violence and the gore and the.
Well, he definitely doesn't pull any punches when he's got when Keith David is kneeing Piper in the groin 5 times in a row. My God, that is like
motherfucker.
We haven't even really talked about the alley fight. We should.
No, I mean, it's like, oh God, it's so good. It's so good. I mean, it's like, and you expect Piper to be good because that's basically what he does. But man, Keith David is with him just the whole step of the way. They're just so great together in that sequence.
And it's a metaphor for how hard it is to wake someone up from programming.
Yeah. And for how like the alien overlords and the yuppies win because they set the underclasses against each other, and by coincidence that it's a black guy and a white guy pummeling each other, like poor white guy and a poor black guy pummeling each other in the alley.
Masterful, right? Oh, so trenchant. So
well, and there's also like
I do love that.
I gotta highlight. There's a really they don't dwell on it, but there's such a gnarly head wound on the back of Keith David's head towards the end of the fight. It's like it's gross. It's like they never really give you a full on shot of it, but man, watching it again, I'm like, oh, that head wound is gross as hell. So yeah, kudos to the makeup people on that.
Yeah, they do a great job just tracking like continuity wise, them getting dirtier and bloodier as it goes on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
I wonder how long they shot that.
Man.
I mean, this movie probably shot really fast in truth, but
yeah.
But it feels like they probably spent half the shoot on that.
Most of the time on that. Yeah. Well, I wonder how many times did Keith David have to break the bottle to only get just a little part of it left. I mean, that might have taken an afternoon at least.
Witty. That is a delightful, clever scene on top of being a 6-minute fist fight. And it's the centerpiece of the film, and it's sort of I guess the ultimate. The strongest legacy of this film is that scene, right? Like,
not even a question.
That's the thing that they'll make fun of on South Park 30 years later. It's just there, and that's. We talked about it on the action sequence draft that we just dropped, the 3 of us, at length, and here we can do it again because it is that important piece of cinema. Well, it's just that fun. It's just that great and memorable, and one of the highlight reels of his career. Carpenter, I think. I have to agree with you, Chris. I think this is probably the best action in a Carpenter film, which, not the highest bar, clear.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, and to your point, Al,
it's as much a comedic set piece as it is an action one,
Well, it works both
comedy
ways.
Action is kind of what he does really well,
sure.
Honestly, when it comes to to action. Like that's kind of present in most of his action. In Big Trouble, in the Escape films. Hell, even Vampires has some decent action that is also kind of comic. That's that might be a contender for good action in Carpenter. I'd be interested to revisit that one. It has some cleverness to its staging in Vampires.
Yeah.
With the dragging him out of we'll get to Vampires, but but to your point, Al, I would have to agree. I don't think that making this more violent as a Verhoeven sci-fi satire would hurt it in any way. I think that if you had more stuff like that dude getting used as a human shield on the escalator in Total Recall, I think that would fit right in They Live, and that would be just fine.
Or like the little insert of him getting stepped on after his corpse getting stepped on as they run after him afterwards, like that. You could have that same gag in The Bank as Piper's fleeing.
If it was Verhoeven, we probably would have had Sharon Stone as Holly.
That's true.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, I think Verhoeven is the more polished version of this, maybe, but I think also it does not star Roddy Piper. And this is sorry, Paul. The ultimate apotheosis of the Roddy Piper film career. This film is his Citizen Kane, you might say.
That's look. I want to be clear. I am a Piper stan here. I really do. I'm really impressed with his performance here. And part of what makes Keith David so great is that he can actually go physically, believably go toe to toe with a professional wrestler in that alley.
Keith David is such good casting. He raises Roddy's game, I feel. Mm-hmm. And I think Roddy raises his fight combat game, like they are so well matched. And, he makes Roddy feel like a star, honestly. Yeah. Keith David.
Well, and that's what's great about Piper as a professional wrestler turned actor. He's the only one of them. Like Hulk Hogan couldn't do this. Even The Rock and Batista can't do this thing where Piper in this movie is obviously he's very buff. He's a big burly dude. But he looks about as big and buff as a guy could be while also looking like a human being who could exist in the world, whose job was not just to be a big oiled up muscle man on the television. And Hulk Hogan can never pass for anything but that. Macho Man can never do that. John Cena, the characters have to be designed for Cena to be a big veiny muscle man that everybody notices the second they walk in the room. It's like, Jesus Christ, what circus did this guy wander out of?
Bautista can barely play a human being. Yeah. Right. I mean, he's great, but he can't really do that.
He's best when he's playing a replicant or an alien. But Piper looks like a person here. I mean, like I said, a big guy, and David is also a large guy, but doesn't have to be roided out to the gills to believably trade punches with him there.
I think that an incredible gift that Roddy Piper has as an actor is that he looks like he's been just pulverized by life. Like he is. Yeah. So convincing as the lowest of the low in this, like he's an everyman, but he's an everyman who everything went wrong. I don't think it's made explicit that he's a Vietnam vet. I almost feel like it should be.
I thought it was, but I can't remember exactly how.
Yeah. Well, no, he just has the vibe and feel of one. I don't think it ever comes up. Like it feels like that's almost something he and Keith David should be bonding over. But it doesn't actually happen. He does have a brief monologue about being tortured by his religious extremist parents.
Yeah,
which you'll forget that's in this movie. It's the only real backstory he gets. Yeah,
that's when him and David, after they have the big fight, and they decide to go check into a flop house together. And poor Keith David has to share a room with Piper and listen to his tales of his religious extremist dad. It's like, what a rough day for Keith David. He gets the shit kicked out of him in the alley. He learns about the aliens are secretly running everything, and now he's got to share a flophouse room with Piper talking about his extremist father. It's like, oh, poor Keith David. And then he's the one stuck having to get groceries the next day.
That's right. I mean, I don't know. Am I starting to like this movie better as we go? I don't know. I guess as
you should.
Yeah, this one you should like, Al. This one's a top shelf Carpenter.
I do like it together once they're together and have that fight. And I was surprised, we're going back to it, that fight doesn't take place until an hour into an hour and a half movie. I'm like, why couldn't we have them together for half of the movie or 2/3 of the movie?
We're kind of at the end of prime Carpenter here. Like he still has some movies.
He's got one more. He's got one more left. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's over. I mean, but this I think is kind of. Because, basically after this, he kind of went away for a little bit, and then he just does kind of a for-hire gig with Memoirs of an Invisible Man. And it just kind of feels like we're hitting kind of a downward slope after They Live. They Live is kind of like, we're at the end of the 80s. He's on fire. He can almost do no wrong. And then he starts doing a lot of wrong.
Yeah.
It all goes wrong when he works with Chevy Chase, yes.
Well, that's true of everyone.
Like, I know Mouth of Madness has a lot of big fans, but I mean, to me, that's like easily the weakest of the Apocalypse trilogy, and it's part of the downslope, I think.
Okay.
I don't know. I've only seen it once. It's been a long time. We'll get to it soon.
Yeah, that's one that I'm definitely going to watch again before you guys put out what the episode, because I'm not a huge fan of it. God, everyone seems to love it so much that I feel like, okay, I must have missed something. I mean, I love Sam Neill, but I got to watch that one again. I'm definitely going to watch it before you guys put out that episode.
I will be here to vociferously defend and praise In the Mouth of Madness when we get to that in a few films. Don't worry about it.
Whoever our guest is on that one, I'm sure will be a big fan of it, because they're not in our circles.
Yeah, that's the one I feel like most people would say that's his best movie of the 90s. Like, I get that sense.
There's any debate on that. Yeah,
that bar isn't even off the ground.
No,
it's just lying there in the sand.
I guess I could see the argument for vampires, but not against In the Mouth of Madness. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I think the debate is whether Carpenter made a good movie after the 80s, which I think most people would probably say, In the Mouth of Madness is it. But who knows? I might love vampires. Never seen that one. We'll find out shortly.
That'll be fun. I mean, it's trash, but it's fun. I mean, I would say the Vampires is to From Dusk Till Dawn as They Live is to RoboCop. How about that?
Well, is
it so much better than From Dusk Till Dawn that it's like the fall off there could be pretty steep. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying you didn't intend that as part of the comparison.
Carpenter never worked with Piper again after They Live, and also may have never made a great movie after They Live. Is that a coincidence? Should he have gone back to the Piper well?
Yeah, I would have liked more Roddy for sure. I mean, there's no other great Roddy film, right? Not even. I mean, maybe in the DT DVD circles, maybe he put out some okay stuff that I didn't see.
Yeah, he made two. Like I alluded to earlier, he did two movies with Tybo creator Billy Blanks. He did Tough and Deadly and Back in Action. And Back in Action is, as those movies go, it's watchable. I'm not going to say good, but I'll at least say watchable. But really, Piper's, I've seen a lot of them, and his post They Live, he didn't really fare much better than Carpenter, really, post They Live. He even had a failed pilot with Piper and Jesse Ventura as wrestlers who become cops called Tag Team.
Really?
Oh, I wish. Yeah. I don't think that would have been good, but I wish it had been made.
I wish we had at least gotten like a 13 episode half season of it. All we got was a pilot, and I feel like we should have gotten at least a half a season of it.
Yeah, so just a limited run like Terriers or something like that.
Yeah.
I just looked up, did a quick Google of Roddy Piper's IMDb and learned that not only was he in the Jamie Kennedy vehicle Kicking It Old School in 2007, he was also in a one season RoboCop TV series in 1994.
Yeah, he was the villain on an episode of the not very good, the just awful RoboCop TV series. He did a lot of
Syndicated?
That was syndicated, yes. Well, Piper, he showed up on a lot of those syndicated early 90s show. He was the villain of the week on one of the Highlander episodes of the Highlander.
That suits him.
Syndicated
that
series.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
That suits professional wrestler turned actor.
Yeah.
My confession is he's better than that. I think he should have been the wrestler in The Wrestler. I'm telling you guys, watch that Always Sunny Wrestling episode.
I remember that. That was very funny.
It's great.
It's very funny.
I say, watch him in it. He's great.
Yeah,
he is great. And this I would have to say, I mean, beyond his promos for WWF on YouTube, this stands as sort of his crowning achievement. Him and Buck Flower.
Absolutely.
This is sort of like the Great Roddy piece of media out there. And I'm glad he's got this one. I mean, because he really did have it, and he had a sad life by all accounts. I believe he said, with regards to The Wrestler, no one understood it until Aronofsky made that movie. Like that described his life perfectly, is what he said. He also said that They Live is not a movie; it's a documentary. So he was prone to saying cool shit sometimes. But
he brings that wrestling promo energy even to interviews about other non-wrestling projects.
Mm-hmm. I mean, as good a job as The Wrestler did, portraying the world of professional wrestling, I thought it did an equally good job pulling back the curtain of the supermarket deli counter. I've never seen the realities of the supermarket deli counter like I did in that movie.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's not that bad a job. Sometimes it's fun, and other times you're just, going to just slice your hand open in a rage. I think that's, what goes for most supermarket delis, and
a little more.
All right. So Roddy Piper, good. Keith David,
and They Live great.
John Carpenter, good.
Yes, They Live great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's a great film, Al.
It is. It's
sorry.
I think it's good.
Sorry, I have to override you. Great film.
Yeah. This is his. I mean, it's my favorite. I understand why people would have other favorites. I get all that. This is just the one that from day one of seeing it, where I was just completely hooked into it. This is one of those movies that's like comfort food to me. I can pretty much watch it anytime and just have a blast watching it. It just as I did to get ready for this podcast. It just never loses any appeal for me. I always spot something. I always pump my fist when there's the brief appearance of Ao Leong when the insurrectionists are being attacked. I mean, there's just so much stuff in this movie that speaks to me, and it hasn't lost anything in the 30 plus years since it came out.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm a big one on this one. This is one of my favorites too. One of my absolute favorites. I mean, I think he's made about 5 or 6 things I think are just masterpieces, and this is one of them. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Al, the final word?
No, I don't want the final word to be me doing that. I think it's a very good movie. I just put 5 or 6 other Carpenters ahead of it.
Okay. Yeah. Look, it's, you've probably seen it if you listened to us this far, but thank you for listening to us this far. Nonetheless, please rate and review on the podcast app of your choice. Rating's easy, but the review even better. And, it helps with the visibility of the podcast. We will be back with the next entry in the John Carpenter's Frameworks, the podcast series here, which is, of course, The Immortal Memoirs of an Invisible Man, starring Chevy Chase. Thank you for joining us, Chris.
Now that one's a masterpiece.
Oh, boy.
I have to assume, not having seen
hot take.
Yeah.
Maybe it is. We'll all find out together.
Daryl Hannah at her blandest.
Ooh, that's something.